So my name is Nathan Barant. I'm the Benefits and Wellness Program Manager here for Panthers Active Wellness Services and FIU. I want to welcome you to one of the more exciting programs that I like to think of in relation to what we do. Now, we do a lot of things in relation to physical activity or stress reduction or nutrition, but the most important re-energizer is sleep. And a lot of us lie in bed with the wheels continually turning and not having the ability to either fall asleep or to stay asleep. And the program was designed by Isabel Alfonsin-Vittoria to help you improve that sleep health, more specifically, the sleep quality. Now, I will say that if anybody has any questions that are out there online, please just go ahead and write them into the chat box and I'll get them answered as soon as I can. And if you have any questions during the presentation for Isabel, please just write them in and we'll make sure that they get into Isabel in an extremely timely manner, so then all your questions will be answered. And then same thing here in the room. If you have any questions in the middle of the presentation or any of your thoughts, please share. Just go ahead and make sure to raise your hand first and don't blurt them out. So without any other hesitation, I'm just going to go ahead and introduce Isabel Alfonsin-Vittoria. She is our Office of Employee Assistance Director and the designer of the Sleep Health, Sleep More, Stress Less program for you out in the community. So Isabel, please take it away.
Good afternoon, everyone. Nice to see so many here, but also to know of everyone watching us online. Happy Friday. Happy Friday, right? You get to the end of the week, it's something to celebrate. Today, the weather not looking so great. Let's hope for better weather for the weekend. Thank you, Nathan. Among the many things that we tackle throughout the year as we look at the wellness of our faculty and staff is everything that we can do to improve the quality of their life. And there's some things that we need to be able to provide to you to inform you better choices. The one thing that we want to talk today about is sleep health and how important it is. Anyone want to take a stab at how much of the population is affected by poor sleep? Any guesses, percentage-wise, either online or here in the room? How many people do you think? 1 in 10, like on the top 8. Okay. Anybody else? Okay. I gotta tell you, it's actually a remarkable number when you think about it. It's anywhere between 33 to 50% of U.S. adults report having trouble sleeping or staying asleep at night. So anywhere between 3 to 5 in 10. That's a startling number, and that's one of the reasons that we put together this program, to help educate you on what it is that you can do better for yourself so that you can improve the quality of your sleep. So I'm going to tell you what we're going to cover. Today is part 1. We will be having another section to the training 2 weeks from today, which will be part 2. Today we're going to talk about what actually is sleep health, okay? We're also going to introduce some national and some global resources, information that you can become more familiar with. We're going to talk about, and I hope to hear from you both online and those here in the classroom, about what you think. I'd like to have a healthy discussion about how the body, the mind, and the environment affect sleep. I'm going to paint a picture that I hope awakens you about the sleep epidemic and some of its dangerous effects and how it impacts us here at work. Part 2, 2 weeks from today, will be about taking action, feeling better, and performing better. So stay tuned. This is too much content to get through in one day. So one of the things that we use, Nathan and I, as we're educating our faculty and staff on taking care of themselves, is we use the wellness wheel. And we tackle through both of our joint programming all of these efforts. We help tap into your intellectual well-being, your emotional well-being, your occupational well-being. Well, today we're going to focus particularly in the physical realm, okay? So I want to give you an example, and I want you to think about this as I describe and see if this is actually the picture of yourself. So this is what we call healthy sleep. And healthy sleep happens when you fall asleep within 15 to 20 minutes, okay, of the time that you actually lie down. So that's the first indication. When you regularly sleep a total of 7 to 9 hours in a 24-hour period. And it's a range, 7 to 9. It's also while you are in your bed, your sleep is continuous. And this is a key part, okay, that I want you to keep in mind. And that you don't have long periods of lying awake when you wish to be sleeping. Think about that, okay? How much time is actually going on after you get in bed. Another indication of healthy sleep is you wake up feeling refreshed, renewed, you know? I use the fill the tank, right? Kind of like when you look at your cell phone when you wake up in the morning, if you've been plugging it at night, what do you see when you look at it in the morning, right? All the bars are full. Is the same true for you? The other indication is you feel alert and you're able to be more productive through the day. You don't have that foggy cloud. You're crystal clear, you're thinking, you're alert. And that's how you know that you slept well. I'm sure you know when you don't, right? And the other way, depending on your lifestyle and your household, if you do live with other people, your partner or your family members are not going to notice anything disturbing, right? Or out of the ordinary during your sleep. Some of us who do sleep with other people, they might say, hey, you know, I noticed that you were tossing all night long. You might not have noticed it, but perhaps your sleeping partner or your relative, your family member might have noticed. So when all of these things are present, you get an A+, okay? The challenge is when you don't, right? So looking at your own behaviors and looking at your own patterns, would you give yourself an A+ today? You don't have to answer the question, it's rhetorical, but if you're here or if you're listening, chances are you're not. You might be somewhere less than an A+ and you want to be doing better, so we're going to talk about what you can do. If you want to learn more, this is a great entity to know about. This is not the Non-Sufficient Funds Foundation. This is the National Sleep Foundation, and they were instituted in 1990 to be the national agency that actually warehouses all of the data around sleep in the country and also has tremendous resources for you. So if you want to know more, you want to imbibe yourself in the literature, the National Sleep Foundation is the source of much of the data. You will have data from many sources. I will source everything and I will give you all the contact information. But the NSF is by far one of the largest. So these are all the things that you can find if you want to know more from the NSF. They have a lot of tools and a lot of resources, and they have benchmarks that help us to know how we're doing against the norm, okay? So one thing that they have that they're very famous for, created the first sleep health journal. So this is an entity that actually produces a lot of research and reports it out. They also created a sleep health index. And this is a measurement. This is a way that people know they can rate themselves. You know, there's actually a grade, if you will. And we have a national grade. I'll tell you what that is a little bit later. And then I also want you to realize that you could actually take some questionnaires and some surveys to find out where you rank compared to that normative index. They have an annual Sleep in America poll. And they run it every year, and the data is fed into the system so that when you go back into the system, you see how the data compares to the year prior. They're also collaborating with Elsevier Publications, so they're working on the first sleep health textbook. They're very committed. Their research is also published in the American Academy of Sleep Medicine Journal, so it's an entity that you can trust. It's not just a Googleable resource that pops up. It might be a vendor trying to sell you a device. You have to be very careful where you source the data. They created a wonderful website that if you want to know more about, is called sleep.org. I put parenthetically that it's easy to use because sometimes we're put off by complicated websites. Their website is very user-friendly, sleep.org. And they're also the promoters of the Sleep Awareness Week. This year, it will be March 8th through March 14th. So NSF, it's a very good resource, and their sleep.org website, a great place for you to go and learn more about. I also wanted to get information from another very credible source. So a lot of the information that we're going to hear over the course of these two sessions is information that came from the CDC. The Center for Disease Control has a very important vision, and it is a world where everyone gets sufficient sleep. And you might say, well, how does my sleep really affect the world? Well, when you hear a little bit more, I hope as you learn, you realize that my lack of sleep could actually cause a lot of damage to the world, depending on where I am, what I do for a living, and what circumstances my choices can impact the life and well-being of other people. So they've dedicated an entire department within the CDC to raise awareness, okay? And the most alarming thing is that they've quantified the scale of the problem, and as a nation, 70 million people are dealing with some type of sleep disturbance. Did you expect that? Did you think it was that big of a, some of you are nodding yes. Is anyone surprised? Did you think it was a smaller scale issue? Did you think it was just happening to you? Because I think that happens to us, right? We see everything from our point of reference, and we see everything through the eyes of what am I doing? How's my life going? It must be my bad, choices. It's actually happening to 70 million people. This is the website if you want to get more familiar. It's cdc.gov/sleep. They have their own department dedicated to promoting awareness. And now this is a global resource, the World Sleep Society, worldsleepday.org. They devoted their efforts at having a global impact. And so they've designated World Sleep Day as March 13th this year. And it was designed to raise awareness. I love their slogan. They're thinking big, so I put it all in big letters. Better sleep, better life, better planet. So it also has an ecological impact. So what are the tools that you can find at the CDC? They have the sleep and sleep disorders team, which you'll find in that website that I just gave you. There's a lot of information there from policymakers, all kinds of agencies, information for the general public, for us to consume. That's what they're dedicated for. Tips on how to live a healthier life. They also have one of the most recognizable surveillance systems for anyone in public health. Anyone in the room in public health? Okay, or anyone online? If you are in public health, then you know what the behavioral risk factor surveillance system is. It's the way that we track all health data for the country. And the CDC has a questionnaire that is very lengthy, but that is the source of the data that you're getting. So they track all health conditions across the country and report it. They also created a campaign that I'm actually very excited about. I don't know if you've seen it. There's some signage around this campaign across the country and all the different interstates. And it's the Drowsy Driving Prevention Week. If you've not seen them, there's some really interesting stuff out there on the road. And they also have a sleep awareness week. So there's a lot of agencies that are trying to tell you, hey, this is important. This is important. Do something more. Anyone want to take a stab? How much of your life, however long you're going to be on this planet, do you spend sleeping? There's a question.
Are there any statistics or relevancy in relation to drowsy driving versus drunk driving?
The data that they track is only drowsy driving. They don't know the source. So the implication on the surveys is self-report. And the self-reports are, did you sleep or not sleep? They're not tracking drunken behavior, okay? That's a good question. Because of course we all know that alcohol is a central nervous depressant, and that when we consume large amounts of it, we can get sleepy behind the wheel. Completely different issue. This is just related to sleep, okay? So again, how many years or what part of our life do you think we spend? If your life expectancy is 78 years, how much of it do you spend sleeping? Or let's look at it in time. How much percentage of your life do you spend sleeping?
Connie says 30%.
She's right. It's 33%. Good job, Connie. A third of your life. A third of your life. And so you must think, if a third of my life, I'm actually asleep and I'm only in my waking life 2/3, this must be a very big, important part of the pie. And yet we don't devote a lot of energy to thinking about how to make it better. The other thing that the CDC does is it has great sleep podcasts. So if you go back to that website and you want to listen to great podcasts from many of their research scientists on the sleep and sleep disorders team, it's free. You just plug it in. You could be driving anywhere, plug it in. You're in traffic anyway. You might as well imbibe yourself with good information. I want to give you some guidance. This comes from their sleep health journal as to how much time you should sleep. Remember that I gave you a range? This is where that range comes from. It starts all the way from newborns and goes through the adult years. Most of us, I think, are somewhere in that yellow section. I'm not sure how it's projecting to those of you on Zoom, but at the very bottom, in what I'm calling sort of gold, is the adult age group between 18 and 60. And for us, we are being told that 7 or more hours of sleep per night is what is indicated, 7 or more, the range being 7 to 9. And we need more sleep as we age. Question?
We have a question relating to the previous slide when you were talking about the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know offhand if they have any podcasts you can listen to help you fall asleep?
They do. They have some recommendations for meditation to go to sleep on that website, and there's a lot of information that you can get from me or Nathan as well to help you with sleeping meditations, but they do have information, so it's worth going, sleep.org. So here's where I want to hear from you. Whether you're here in the classroom or whether you're online, this is a great part to sort of generate a good conversation, because all of these things do affect sleep, the body, your mind, and in the environment. So I'm curious, and I would love for you to share from your own points of view, from your own reference, from your dig in from your life. What are the things that could be physically going on to a person or that happen to you that affect your sleep? Physical. So think physical. We're going to go section by section. What physically could keep you from getting a good night's sleep? Pain? Absolutely. Nathan, you have something?
Sleeping on the couch with a crazy dog.
Okay, that's not physical, that's environmental, but that's a very good answer. What else physical? Okay. Well, and we're going to get to sleep hygiene because that's one of the things that we're going to talk about is level of activity. What else is physical that could get in the way? Nathan?
Back pain.
Back pain. We talked about pain. Any kind of pain, right, will affect it. What else? Caffeine. So the consumption of a stimulant. In the back? Your bed is environmental, but we're going to get to that. I want you to think physical. What about the person? Hunger, absolutely. If you have not provided your body with proper nourishment, it's going to tell you. Nathan, we have somebody else.
So I have 3. One is surgery.
Okay.
Being sick.
Uh-huh.
And sleep apnea.
Okay, so a sleep condition, having some kind of illness and recovery after surgery. Absolutely. Anyone think about hot flashes? Right? People who have physical pain are limited sometimes by sleeping. There's also respiratory issues that keep people from falling asleep. People who have difficulty with the breathing, with their airway, such as apnea, also have difficulty. Nathan, you have somebody else?
Restless leg syndrome.
Absolutely. Well, and you guys are informed. We're going to get to that in a little bit, but basically physical limitations, physical conditions, illness, pain, right? Age, right? There are things that will affect the body, and then the body will have a very difficult time with resting. Breathing, if you can't breathe, you can't go to sleep. What about stomach distress, right? Have you ever gone to bed and you're having heartburn? You can't go to sleep, right? Or if you're having an upset stomach and you're having diarrhea or you're having nausea, things like that. Pregnancy can affect sleep, right? What else, Nathan?
Dehydration and muscle cramps.
Absolutely. Anything that causes discomfort is going to make the body struggle during its time of rest. So we've done a really good job. Let's move the list over to mental. What about what clouds us emotionally? Do you think affects our sleep? In the back.
When you're worried about something.
Absolutely. Preoccupation, right? You go to bed and your mind is full of worry. Very difficult to find peace in sleep. Nathan.
Anxiety.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So hard to give in, right? To let the body go when the body is pushing, when the adrenaline is pushing. Again, in the back.
If you had a bad day.
Yes.
What happened that day?
Lingering thoughts, right? things that didn't quite go the way you wanted, they stay with you. Nathan.
Excitement prior to travel or awesome projects.
So sometimes, again, adrenaline, that's also for the good, but it's a stimulant at a time that you don't need it. So nervous energy, good energy, can also be counterproductive at the time of sleep. What else? What other condition, very, very well known, affects poor sleep? We talked about anxiety. Insomnia is a medical condition. I'm looking for an emotional condition. Yes. Depression, ding, 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 ding. Number one reason that people can't sleep, depressed people. Nathan?
Stress.
Absolutely. Stress affects sleep because it brings about and it produces anxiety and worry and preoccupation. So obsessive thinking, right? Very difficult to put an end to that. Good job on the mental sleep issues. What about environmental? You guys got ahead of there. Somebody said the bed, right? The bedding, the surface that you're on. What if you're going through a difficult time and your partner says, you know what? I'm going to go sleep on the couch. It's not the same thing to sleep on the couch as it is to sleep on the bed, the surface. What else, Nathan?
I have three. One from Connie, Diana, and Elizabeth.
Okay.
One is my partner snores.
Absolutely.
The second is lighting.
Yes, absolutely.
The third is phone light.
So smart. What a great group of viewers. Everything that is ambient, right? The person you care so much about but is having a difficult time with their airway is going to snore. Lighting is going to affect the situation in the room. What's another environmental thing in the room? Temperature. Right here, those of us that are in GL 220 are a little cold. Some are comfortable, but some of us are feeling it. So it's hard to rest. Or when it's very hot. Yes? Difficult to be comfortable in a bed when the bedding doesn't feel good on the touch of your skin. Nathan, somebody else?
This ties into what you just said, hotel beds.
Oh, yes. How about just a foreign environment, right? This is not your house. This is not your room. These are not your sheets. And you're traveling. Well, in the traveling example, it's environmental, right? Partly. It's also the emotional because you're not in your habitat. And it's also physical because you might be traveling and there's wear and tear. So I hear a lot of people tell me when they come back from vacation where they were supposed to go get good rest, that they're happy to be home. and then we'll talk about it and say, you know what, all the flights and the travel and the bedding and the hotel and the noise, and we were in New York City and we couldn't get a quiet night's sleep. And it's like, man, that's how you feel after vacation. So all of these things can affect us. And it's going to be very important while you're here and learning to figure out which of these are affecting you. You might also come to the realization that it's multiple sources. Yes, Nathan?
We have one more in relation to the environment. Actually, two more. One is pets on the bed.
Oh, yes.
The second, loud noises outside.
Very true. And how about not just dogs on the bed? How many people sleep with their children, right? I just had a client who I saw who was feeling very stressed and couldn't put it together as to what the stressor was. And after we dug and dug and dug and dug and dug, oh yes, we have a newborn. And yes, we also have a toddler. And yes, we're all in one room. And you're wondering why you can't sleep. Yes. So sometimes, it's all of those things affecting us together. And how many of us we actually have control over, right? You may not have control over your snoring spouse. That might require a different solution, okay? You can put on a warmer blanket over, right? There's some things you can do. You can't leave your hotel room if you're traveling. So there's some things you can do something about and some things you can't. I wanted to talk to you about polysomnography because that is the major device that is utilized even today to study sleep disorders, okay? And it's multi-parametric in that it measures different things. It measures brain waves, it measures eye activity, and it also measures movement. And all of those things are helpful in diagnosing conditions. So any data that is coming from sleep studies is going to involve this kind of device. So it's just informational. Here's an opportunity for you to learn more. I don't know how well this is going to be visible to those of you online, but we can get these slides to you. And I apologize for that. They're a little bit difficult, but it's a lot to get in one slide. And I wanted you to see all the stages at once. This is really your sleep cycle. So imagine this is the wheel. that is happening every night that you are actually going to sleep. As you see at the very top, it starts with stage 1. There are actually 5 stages. 5 stages that you have to go through to complete a full night's sleep. And they all have different periods of time. One of the things that I want you to learn is that it's important that you actually get through the 5 stages. So disruption to the 5 stages is actually what affects the quality of your sleep. In the middle, it says, all these combine to make one sleep cycle. So 5 stages, how many cycles? 1 cycle. Now, each cycle has a different period of time, and they vary from 90 minutes to 2 hours. So they're not all identical, but in combination, they form one sleep cycle. So this should be what we experience every time that we go to bed. The first one is very easy. Sleep 1, stage 1 rather, is transition to sleep. It's just that little ritual of just actually getting into the bed, into your sleeping surface. And how much time did I say you needed to be able to get a good night's sleep? 15 to 20 minutes from the time that you hit, you know, your mattress, you should be sleeping. So that is what should be happening in that period of time. That's usually just where the eyes get a little bit heavy and you're just settling in. So you've already finished that cycle. You're already in light sleep. Stage 3 comes along. This is kind of where you know that you're already falling asleep and then somebody talks to you. Has that happened? Let's say you're sleeping with your partner and you're falling and then they tap you and then it alarms you, right? That's when you realize that you were already out. That's stage 3. We call that deep sleep. It's difficult to be woken up. You get aroused and sometimes you get annoyed and you're like, didn't you see that I was sleeping? So these stages, okay, get deeper when you're getting into stage 4. That is your deepest sleep, okay? This is where there's no REM. Does anyone know what REM stands for? Rapid eye movement. Now, do you remember in the polysomnograph that one of the things it measures is how fast your eye moves? That's how you know if you're actually asleep or if you're actually in a waking state. So this one lasts only 30 minutes, but it is exactly where you need to get the brain to recharge and for your organs to recharge. Sometimes we don't know that sleep is not just about getting rest. It's actually the rebooting of your organs. This is the time when they get to do their work to get ready for the next day. This is also where your hormones get recharged. So what happens if you're robbed of that? What do you think? What are you doing to the body and to those organs over time if you were to develop a chronic sleep disorder? Think about that. That's how the organs eventually get ill. And that's how sometimes we face hormonal imbalances and we don't know why. And it's because our sleep cycle has been so chronically impaired that we have actually damaged our organs. Nathan, you have a comment.
Yes, Connie says that when the sleep gets disrupted, you feel out of whack.
And that's because your organs are out of whack or your hormones are out of whack. And if both are out of whack, and if we're perfectly honest with ourselves, any one of us has probably had one of those nights, right? Where things just didn't go according to plan and you're miserable that next day. If that drags on to another day and drags on to another day, it can actually even alter your mental status. I have had clients come in to see me and it's actually sleep deprivation that is causing the mood issue. They don't have a mood disorder. As soon as the sleep issue is resolved, their mood is normalized. So sleep is very important. Stage 5, which is where this cycle ends, okay, is the dream stage. This is where many of you will tell me, well, I don't dream. Well, that's unlikely. You probably do. What you don't have is recollection of the dream, and that's okay, okay? But this is usually where your heart rate and your blood pressure increase. This is where your brain activity is increasing. This is where the REM sleep is most affected. What do you think the reason for that is? So a lot is happening at that stage. What makes sense about that? Because you're going through the cycle. Ding, ding, ding. You're going back to what? To an awakened state. So the brain is most productive because it's getting ready to be rebooted and start all over again. Nathan, you had a comment.
Yeah, I had 2. One was that the circadian rhythm can be altered.
Yes.
And then the other was feeling in your dreams.
Okay. All right. Well, the circadian rhythm we're going to talk about next time. So you have to stay tuned to how that is affected. And the answer is yes, it does get affected. And we don't realize the implications of our decisions when we deny our body what our body needs. This is just something that the body needs. And so when we don't give it to it, there's obviously some adverse effects. And the circadian rhythm is one of those things that we affect, unfortunately. And it takes a toll on us because it's supposed to happen and the body knows it. And when it doesn't get it, it gets upset. So the thing that I want you to remember about 7 to 9 hours, but I'm also talking about quality. And quality depends on continuity. If this cycle gets discontinued for any reason, you are not going to get the refresh that you imagine that your body needs. So a disruption to that would affect not only the continuity, but the quality. So when I ask people, how well do you sleep? I ask them 2 questions. How long do you sleep? And how continuous is that sleep? Oh, well, you know, I wake up 3 times a night because I have a bladder disorder. Well, that is not good sleep quality. That's just sleep quantity. So chances are, even though they're getting all their hours in, the constant awakening, going to the restroom and going back to bed is affecting the recharging. So it's not just the duration, it's the quality. And the quality depends on the continuity. I told you that I was going to give you some sort of alarming information. I hope that this is actually awakening, if you know what I mean, because eventually you're going to have to make some better decisions about how you take care of yourself. It is an epidemic. Anytime that the CDC calls something an epidemic is because the prevalence is so high and the possibility of harm is high. So when something is an epidemic, it's something that we need to take seriously. And they call it an epidemic because it is a lack of sleep that is linked to all of the above: motor vehicle crashes, industrial disasters, and medical and occupational errors. I know we have a comment. I just want to finish this thought. Remember when we asked at the beginning of the session, well, what about my behavior? Why is my behavior so important to the world? Or why is my behavior so important to the planet? And why is my sleep? How does my sleep tie into the big picture? Well, you know, depending on what I do, maybe even for a living or where I go, that could make a big difference. What if I'm an air traffic controller and I don't sleep well? Yes, a lot of air traffic control mechanisms have changed. There's a lot of technology, but what does it still need? It needs humans. And if I haven't slept and I'm not doing my job well and the system isn't working well, what could I cause? I could cause a major issue. So in transportation, it could really take a toll. What if I am a neurosurgeon? What if it's your brain that I'm going to go into, tweak some minor procedure, but I have been covering for a colleague who's away, and this is my 3rd surgery, and I've only taken a 90-minute nap in the last 3 days. So there are times when your personal sleep can have an impact much larger than you realize, depending on even what you do occupationally. There was a comment, Nathan.
Now, this comes from Katie. Does an interruption in your sleep mean your cycle begins again at stage 1, or does the cycle?
But you've been shortchanged. And I also have a follow-up question to that Katie had. Other people ask me, well, do you ever recover it? No, it's not recoverable. So that is why it drags on to the next day and the next day. So it's critical. In other words, it builds, okay? So you go back to it, but you just got shortchanged, okay? It's like ordering a meal to go is very different than ordering it at the restaurant. What happens when you have a meal to go and you open it whenever you get anywhere? It's never really exactly what you did order had you stayed at the restaurant. Same thing, you get cheated on the portion. So here's the impact that the CDC is saying. Often when these things happen, 23% of the people report reduced concentration, 23%. 18.2 reduced memory, 10.5 found it difficult to manage their financial affairs. That's a serious matter. What happens if you're, making purchases and you're not using your best judgment because your mind is not clear? And 8.6 said that it increased performance difficulty. So it's kind of hard to do your job when you haven't gotten the rest that you need. These are more alarming. These are some of the dangerous effects on health. So a lack of sleep has been linked to hypertension, diabetes, depression, and cancer. And, you know, these are not inferences. This is all based on, remember, the surveillance data that the CDC tracked? So they're able to have a direct correlation between how sleep-deprived individuals ended up becoming ill. 36% of the respondents to the Sleep America poll say that they've nodded off while driving at least once. Do you want to be on the road with them? I don't. I ended up having somebody run into me last year that way. I saw them, I blew my horn, they didn't hear me, my car was wrecked. Nathan.
We have a comment from Connie. I've heard that oversleeping does not make up for lost sleep. What does the research say?
The research says that you have to almost reboot. And so it's not, you can never go back to catching up on what you didn't do. It's starting over, moving forward, and creating a plan and being intentional about what sleep hygiene you put in place moving forward. So no, you can't make up for what you lost. That's true. You just have to create a plan moving forward. And eventually over time, you'll reboot. Because if you're sleeping through the cycle and your organs are getting the rest time that they need and your hormones are getting rebalanced, you should be fine over time. But it may take a couple more weeks just to get back to baseline if you had a long period of sleep deprivation. I'll get to your comment. A good example would be someone who's going through something temporary. You have a small child and your child requires surgery and you're sleeping in a chair in the hospital next to your child for 5 days. It's going to take 2 weeks to get back to where you were before the 5-day sleep deprivation. Does that bring it to a good example? So it's not going to be just one night of being back at home to be back where you were before the 5 days. It's going to take you up to 2 weeks, sometimes double the amount of time that your sleep was impaired to get it back on track. What was the comment, Nathan?
2 questions. One, from Elizabeth, how can you recover or function after a bad night of sleep? 2, has anybody studied the benefits of cat naps as a way of helping?
Yes, and we're going to get to that in the second segment. There are benefits and there are things that you can do. Eating well is one of the things that you can do. Doing self-care, anything that might be helpful for you, whether it's taking a break or doing a relaxation practice. And of course, finding ways to normalize your sleep cycle again. So being intentional. One of the things we're going to learn a little bit today, because I'm going to give you a little bit of a start on this discussion, but we're going to complete it the next time, is actually putting a plan in place, not just letting sleep be something that may or may not happen, but literally putting a plan in place so that you can actually get it right, because you can actually be intentional about sleep. We have a lot of data, so I'm just going to run through it to make sure that we stay on time. 32% of the poll takers said they drove drowsy at least once a month. They also found that sleep deprivation impairs your ability to judge situations. That's a little scary. Like how close you might be to a car or how much time you have to make that turn. Those are all judgment calls. And if you're a little bit fuzzy, you're going to make a call that might be or may not be accurate. A work week of back-to-back, so 4 to 5 hours of sleep creates the same cognitive impairment as legal drunkenness. So imagine, if you spend one whole week with missing 4 to 5 hours of sleep, you're literally as impaired as if you were drunk. Remember the 5 days of sleeping in the hospital with your child? That's almost a 5-day work week. So that person, when they leave, is going to be almost as if though they had been impaired. So that's important to keep in mind. Those who sleep more than 6 hours per night are 30% more likely to be overweight. So if you sleep less than. So it's also, these studies are premature as compared to the ones on top, but it is showing a trend. There is now a linkage between being overweight and not sleeping enough. Again, hormonal, right? You're not sleeping enough, you're affecting your hormonal balance, it's affecting your metabolism. Losing 2 hours of sleep on average over a long period of time can double the risk of death. So everything that I have colored red, which I'm not sure translates very well on Zoom, are all the things that I want you to remember. Losing 2 hours of sleep on average over a long period of time actually can double the risk of death. So it's very important. This is a list of all the things that influence your health and well-being, and it's a little bit fuzzy, and I apologize. I got it from the BBC, and there was nothing better out there that I could copy, but it was from the BBC's sleep survey of 2018. And of all the things that they felt in terms of their respondents led to their health and well-being, they actually weighted 87% that sleep was one of the most important things. So we know it's important, but do we plan for it to be do we give it the importance that it needs? Remember the sleep index I told you? Okay, so the National Sleep Foundation has calculated the sleep index for the United States on a scale of 0 to 100. And over the last 3 years, because this data that I have for you is as recent as last year, it hasn't changed. It's 76, okay? And 76 is based on the fact that the people that responded to the survey had maintained sleep quality, continuity, okay? Sleep quality is enormously important. Sleep continuity, okay? And it requires a combination of REM and non-REM. Remember stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, stage 4, that there's all 4 to 5 cycles that they last that amount of time. When they don't, we don't have good sleep quality. And then our NSF sleep index would be changed. This is data about people who feel effective. Based on our time limitation, I'm not going to go through each of these, but essentially the lesson in this slide is people who sleep better, who have a higher sleep index, feel more effective the next day. It's logical, right? The more I sleep, the more effective I feel. The less I sleep, the lower my sleep index, the less effective I feel. And it makes sense, because if I'm dragging, if I'm tired, if I'm foggy, if my tank is half empty, how am I going to be able to produce? So effectiveness is tied into sleep quality. People who do better sleep better. Does that make sense? Okay. Sleep disruption. I want to give you a number, because as an employer, we always have to think about the human impact, like how this affects the person, but how does it affect the organization? Well, on a personal level, it just is undesirable, right? To not sleep well. It just doesn't feel good. We need the power to get through the day, but as an organization, the American College of Occupational and Environmental Medicine did a study, and you know what they found out? That people who don't sleep well can cost their employer up to $2,000 annually in costs. Why do you think that is? Why do you think that your sleep affects your workplace? And why does it cost money to your employer that you don't sleep well? You're not as productive. You're not yielding as much, right? You're going to make mistakes, or things are going to be undone. Nathan.
So the question is, in relation to the sleep disruption or the ability to increase that quality, but more along the lines of medicinally, do you get real benefits of sleep with sleep aids like melatonin, cannabis, Ambien, etc.?
We're going to have to wait for session 2. If I take the time to break that down now, we won't get through the content. And I thank you for the question, but we're going to get to solutions in part 2. We're not tackling those yet. We're really still identifying the problem so that we know what it is that we want to fix. And we're going to have to determine what is wrong before we start thinking of the remedy, because the solutions are different depending on what the problem is. Okay? Again, this was looking at the adverse effects of people who don't sleep well. And naturally, people who don't sleep well don't perform well. So we asked people how they prioritize all these areas in their life. And interestingly enough, only 10% of the people that took the poll prioritized sleep. They prioritized other things. They spent more energy on other things. And while some of those other things are good, we're now learning that if we don't pay enough attention to sleep, it's going to impact those other things. Remember the wellness wheel? They all feed into each other. That's why it's a continuum, right? So if I don't take care of that slice of the physical, it's going to affect occupational. It's going to affect personal. So even though these people said, they were devoting 35% of energy to their fitness and nutrition, if they're not sleeping well, it's going to take a toll. This slide is about people who have determined what they want to prioritize. And actually, people who prioritize sleep are actually healthier. And what we learned is that people who plan their day starting the night before are actually much more successful the day after. Does that make sense? So it's like, you know, you have a big meeting and you want to think about what you want to wear and you put a lot of attention to picking out that outfit. I want you to think, how do I want to feel when I wake up in the morning? Well, based on how I want to feel, I need to go to bed at 10 because I need to be up by X. Does that make sense? So this is about knowing to prioritize sleep in your planning. And people who prioritize sleep in their planning wake up feeling better. Okay, so this is a heavy slide. And I brought it up because I want you to see all the different types of sleep-wake disorders that there are, because they are pervasive and they are many. We are going to tackle as many as we can in the time we have. And we're going to do that in the second half. But there's a lot of sleep disorders and they all require different solutions. So that's why we wanted to be thoughtful and not rush through it for the purposes of today. We're going to look at these. We're going to look at insomnia. Okay, we're also going to talk about sleep apnea. We're going to go deep into what narcolepsy is. We're also going to cover restless leg syndrome, which someone online brought up. And there's another condition that a lot of people don't know as much about, which is the periodic limb movement disorder, PLMD. And again, we're going to go into them in depth next time, but I want you to know from everything that you saw up in that diagram, these are the ones that are the most common. I'm going to tell you the prevalence, and I'm going to also tell you what are the best practices on each of these in terms of solutions that you can explore. The most important thing I want you all to walk away from today is knowing sleep is key. It's 1/3 of your life, and you need to be thoughtful about it. You need to prioritize it, and you need to plan for it. It's actually important. Your day tomorrow is going to go better for better night planning and for better night sleeping. So the first thing you need to know is that you own your sleep health. No one can do this for you. You have to make it a priority. You have to decide that it's something that you care about. You have to act on it. You can't just think it. It's not enough to say, I'm going to do it. You have to do it. You have to engage help. Sometimes it's something that requires a little bit of support, whether it's from the people that you live with or a professional, depending on what is the sleep issue that you're facing. Sometimes it might mean that you need a consult with your primary care physician. Okay, you might need to see a specialist. You could also come to us at the OEA. You could go to Nathan and he can do a wellness consultation with you. So you don't have to go through this alone. There is help, and sometimes we do need a little guidance. The other thing you're going to need to is make a commitment, because this is critical. This is life-changing. And so if you decide that you're going to tackle it, you need to commit to an action plan and really see it through. Find out, how can life be different if I just tweak this a little bit? And if you do make some gains, I want you to reinforce them and continue. I'm often disappointed when I run into somebody that I've seen get better and they tell me, oh, you know, I'm kind of going through this again. And I'll ask, well, what's going on? Well, I stopped ABC. Well, was ABC working? Yeah, but I thought I was done. And I'm like, if it works, keep working it. It's important. Stay connected to people who are living healthy lives. Surround yourself with people that care about their well-being, right? Sometimes we are better in community. If other people have great practices, ask them what they're doing. If you're doing well, give guidance to somebody who you see might not be, and then make an investment into sleeping well. I want to tell you about this great study before we close, because this is actually new. So this is a new part of this training. This is the resource, www.sleephealth.org. This is actually a new system that the National Sleep Apnea Association has launched. It is free, and you might want to do it. You might want to put it on your phone. It's a free 7-day sleep health activity tracker, and it's actually going to be able to also be done off of your Apple Watch. It's absolutely free. They'll give you all the data, and you're contributing to sleep research. So as an institution of higher education, I always like to think about how we can give back to education. This is one thing we can do. They will give you back your personalized data. No one will ever have your information except for the data that is tracked, not your personal identifiable information. Yes, Nathan.
So this comes from Yanira. Can spouses with sleep issues meet with you?
Yes. Anybody who's got a spouse and is a full-time benefits eligible employee can be referred to the OEA. because it's an extension of service for you working at FIU. So if your spouse is in need, they can come for a consultation at no cost, okay? It's important that you have, a balanced life, and it's difficult sometimes when, you're health-minded and health conscious, but you see someone you care about that isn't. So we find that it's very important in the employee assistance program, as well as in the wellness program, that we pass our learnings, secondarily, tertiarily to people that we care about. That's why we extend the benefit to your family. If you have someone that is in need of any service that you would be using, please refer them to the OEA. And with that, I will conclude and turn it over back to Nathan. Thank you.
Thank you, Isabel. That was a lot of information. I know I definitely learned quite a few different tidbits that really make me want to come back to the next session. So I will be here, and I hope you will too. The next one will be January 31st, same time, same place. If you haven't already gotten a Zoom invite, you can always email us at pawswellness@fiu.edu. It will be live streamed once again. We do highly encourage you to come on down to GL 220 when we have it on the 31st, since there's nothing like that live interaction and being able to see the awesome faces that are out there. But if you can't make it, that's okay. We're still going to be here live online just for you and your sleep health. If you have any questions or any comments, email us, pawswellness@fiu.edu. And we're going to go ahead and send out the slides later today, so then you'll be able to go ahead, read them. Since they were a little fuzzy, we were a little far back, but that's okay. Hopefully you took great notes. I know I did. And with that being said, I want to thank you for being here. This has been a fantastic session. This is one of my favorite programs that we put on. And I couldn't be more excited to see how many people were here and online. So thank you. And with that, we'll see you on session 2, January 31st. Sleep well.
Thank you, everybody.